Hey guys, welcome to KSSP Podcast. I am Spencer.
And I'm Katie.
And today we are going to talk about perception. And to start that off, Katie has a quote for us, and then we're going to go over some questions.
All right. So this is Rob Stufflebeam from the Mind Project, and he says, "Well, it is true that perception is one of many aspects of intelligent systems studied by cognitive scientists. It is also true that there are many aspects to perception. Thus, cognitive scientific research into the nature of perception is driven by many kinds of questions. For instance, many cognitive scientists labor to resolve issues about human perception. Some of the questions motivating their research include, how do our sensory systems work? Why are we susceptible to illusions? Which structures in the brain perform which perceptual functions? Do we owe our ability to recognize faces, places, objects, etc. to special computer programs running our brains? And how do perceptual states acquire meaning?" So there's a couple of these I think we can answer here. So why do you think we're susceptible to illusions?
I feel like I read something about that at one point, and it's because our brain is trying to form like a full picture so that it can more so understand. But I guess, why are we susceptible? I don't know.
Because I think part of it is because we're humans and we're not perfect, right? So our perceptions aren't always going to be perfect because our brains don't always function exactly perfectly.
Okay, yeah. And I wonder though too, like, are other species, like, I guess we probably have no way of knowing if they are susceptible to illusions as well. Or I guess, I don't know, can they do studies on?
They probably could. I guess I don't know the research behind it. If I had to guess, I would say other animals are susceptible to hallucinate. Well, I mean, because I've seen like my cat hallucinate that there are bugs or something like that she's trying to catch when there's nothing there.
But how do we know they're not actually seeing something that we just don't perceive?
And that's true too. We could be the ones under the illusion in that case. I mean, we could be under illusion in any case. Really?
Yeah. I guess to me that's not an illusion. I see that as living in different realities almost. If it's that, like, if the cat is actually chasing something that is in their reality, but we don't see it, doesn't mean that it's not part of their reality, at least in my opinion. It's very interesting to think about too. Because I have seen my previous cat and my parents' cats just acting like they're chasing nothing. So it's very, like, I always wonder though. You know the one crab? I don't know if that probably... The one that can, like, is really strong and really colorful. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head. And it has, like, more rods and cones, I believe, in its eyes. So it, in theory, it can see more colors. Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard about that, but that's really interesting, though.
But yeah, so I don't think we can prove that it can see more colors. And I guess in my head, to me, it would make more sense if it has more rods and cones. I don't think it, unless those rods and cones could perceive like like different wavelengths, I think it just fine tunes the color spectrum. I don't think that it adds new colors. I mean, you can say that the fine tuning of the colors is in a way a new color, and yeah, I guess you could argue that, but it isn't like changing the color, at least not in my mind, and I could be wrong.
And I mean, the rods and cones, it just depends what wavelength of light they're able to perceive, because they could potentially see like ultraviolet light, for example.
Yeah, so then they would see more than we could see, which would also be really cool.
Yeah, it depends what range those rods can perceive wavelengths in.
But yeah, I like that. I don't even know if it's a crab. Let me look it up. I was wrong. It is not a crab. It is a shrimp. The mantis shrimp.
Oh, the mantis shrimp.
Yes, yes. I was like, I feel like you probably have heard of it before.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I just always think that's cool.
Yeah, that's definitely fascinating.
And they look pretty too, but...
I was just going to move on to the next question. Do we owe our ability to recognize faces, places, and objects, etc., to special computer programs running our brains? I would say that the brain does function similar to how a computer does. You could almost call it a computer. Just the way that we cognitively process things, whether that's our external or internal perception. Now, what do you think? Do you think we could call the way our brain functions similar to a computer program?
Expand.
So I guess the way I was explaining it, the way that our brain processes information is similar to the way like an algorithm would process information and learn from it.
Okay. So it's asking if I just think our brains are special computers?
Yeah.
Yes. I think the basic function is they can work like computer programs, but I do think, I mean, like any computer program, I guess you could say, we learn, obviously. So we can expand the program, like just our knowledge in general, which allows us to process different things, maybe comparatively to people in the past who didn't have that kind of knowledge. So they wouldn't necessarily make those connections. So I do think the basic is it functions like a program, but I also think it can expand itself, whereas like a computer, I mean, artificial intelligence might be different. I think they're still kind of working on that. I don't think that there's any fine tuning of that yet, but I do think, and any program, even like the coder is going to go in and add probably new functions to make it work differently or work better too. So
yeah.
In a way, I guess you could say our brains are kind of like that, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say the more information you're able to process throughout your life, the more diversity in information you're able to process, the more accurate your perception is going to be. Obviously, unless maybe you have some kind of mental illness or something, that's obviously going to affect your perception as well. But in general, for your own personal baseline, I would say it's better to expose yourself to diversity of information.
Yeah, and like you can't just take your culture and how we act in our society and project that onto every other society, because they may have different norms that they practice or just different social norms. So I think in that sense also it shows just how unique we can, as a species, I guess, Homo sapiens humans can be as well.
Yeah.
And then that's another thing, just adding to your knowledge that you wouldn't know their norms without learning about them. Like you wouldn't just unless you were born there and grew up with them. But otherwise we don't just naturally know everybody's norms. But
right. And
so that's also expanding our brains in a way.
Exactly. Meeting people who have grown up differently than you, have experienced a different culture than you have. Like the more you expose yourself to that, the better you're able to socialize with others and process social information.
Yeah. And I feel like it helps with empathy, obviously, too.
It does help with empathy. I definitely agree.
I'm not going to say you have to live an experience to understand it, but you do have to at least know what someone has been through to understand. Like you can't
empathize with them.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. And then the last one, I think, from here that we're going to talk about is how do perceptual states acquire meaning? And I think they acquire meaning from our emotional connection to a perception. So like you smell a certain smell and you get a feeling of warmth because it reminds you of somebody that you care about, for example. Or like if you like see a picture from a time that you remember and maybe it wasn't a positive time and so you have negative feelings surrounding it.
So by perceptual state, do they mean perceptual state? Does that just mean like an experience kind of, if you were to simplify?
Yeah. I guess, yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. So yeah, I would say emotions too, because that really helps like lock an experience in, especially if the emotion is heightened, obviously, then it definitely kind of locks it in. I don't know how to explain it in any other way, I guess, except that the emotion is definitely going to heighten and give it meaning, because if you go through an experience that you don't necessarily, that I guess you could say, I mean, not that you're content with, but just that, like, I guess, I don't know, something for me, maybe, that I mentioned before, sports. I'm not really into sports, but so if I went to like a sporting game with my family, like that would be important just because I'm hanging out with my family, but it wouldn't really stick out other than that, if that makes sense, because I don't attach any meaning to sports personally.
Yeah, I think in the moment, at least for me, I can get into the emotion of a sport and wanting a certain team to win, maybe just being in the emotionality of the game. But outside of that, I don't think about sports.
Yeah.
I'll definitely sports if someone's watching them.
Yeah, and I guess I get it. Like, you can get into it with your family. That's especially if they have a team that they root for, then, I mean, why not? Like, that's just, in a way, playing a role. I do get that you can because then it's not like, it is your emotion, obviously, because you are experiencing it, but it's not one that you would maybe necessarily feel if, or at least for me, I guess, I wouldn't be able to get into sports if I was just watching it alone.
Yeah.
Like if I had my friends and family around me and they were, then I probably could, because that's a community connection thing. But I personally don't think I could watch sports alone and get into them. So to me, they wouldn't really stick with, like, the memory of being with my friends and family would, but not this, like, I wouldn't know what happened during the game, I guess, like how some people remember instances from game, and that's great, because that's awesome that people are passionate about that. It's just, that's something that I'm passionate about, so it doesn't stick with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's awesome that we all have differences that we're passionate, or hobbies, things that we're passionate about. So
yeah, and perception is a tricky field to study. One concept I think is interesting: the color you might see as red, I may perceive it as green. It's the same light wavelength, but we don't know if our brains process the information the same way or not. So like the world could look completely different from somebody else's eyes. Like even just
whoever determined what green is the only person who will know what true green is.
Yes, but if we could all realize that people have different perceptions, some are grounded in reality and some aren't going to be, but we can work to help people ground their beliefs back into reality, and then maybe they'll even feel some empathy for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, because are you kind of talking more about, not any specific, but just more of like some of the more like damaging thinking? Yeah.
Or, damaging, or even people who maybe believe in something delusional that, like, might be damaging to them personally. There's also beliefs that could be damaging to others as well.
Yeah. Are you ready for my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so initially I saw this on TikTok, this question, and it kind of blew my mind, but it's about time, which I guess the name for time is chronoception, like the perception of time, chronoception. The question goes, the meeting on Wednesday got pushed forward 2 days. What day is the meeting? So to me, the meeting is on Monday, but when is the meeting for you, Katie?
For me, the meeting would be on Friday.
So there was a rationale in the video, and it said, and I'm not going to pretend I completely understand the rationale, but I'm going to tell you guys the rationale. So it said, if you said Monday, which I did, then you have a time moving perspective. So you see yourself as stagnant, and time is moving forward through you. And then if you said Friday, you have an ego moving perspective, and that's when you see yourself moving forward through time. And in the TikTok, they did have a really cool, it was just a little diagram that basically showed, so if you said Friday, you kind of see yourself in like a desk chair, and then you're on like the x-axis, you're like moving through time. Whereas if you said Monday, then you're here stagnant and time is like moving through you. I don't know if my hand diagrams made sense, but basically from what I understood is that you see like time passing through you instead of yourself passing through time. Which I guess when I first initially thought of that, I didn't even think of it like that. I just think I was thinking more of the semantics. When someone says we're going to move something forward, to me, that means we're going to get it done with quicker because we want to move forward in life, if that makes sense. So we're going to do this sooner than later, is how I perceived it. Like, that's how it made sense in my head. So if they said we're going to move the meeting backwards, would you think Monday then?
Yeah. Like, wait, what day is the meeting supposed to be on?
So the meeting is on Wednesday. We're going to move the meeting back 2 days.
Oh, wait. I think I answered the question now.
Well, I think it's just semantics then.
Yeah.
Because I guess the time thing, I don't know. Do you see yourself moving through time, or do you see time moving through you?
I definitely see myself moving through time.
And I guess personally, I don't know. I've never thought of it, but
yeah,
I don't really see time. So maybe time is moving through me because I'm not seeing time. But obviously time exists. Like, I know that time, I'm getting older. So time definitely exists. But I guess I don't. But that also is because I, in a sense, have more free time right now, just to work on like our podcast and other things. So just, I'm not focused on like what day it is of the, I mean, for a podcast I am, obviously, but otherwise it isn't really fully relevant to me right now, if that makes sense. So I think that's kind of also why I haven't paid much attention to time, except that like Halloween was on Monday is the main thing, but really otherwise I don't, like I know the days of the week when I need to, but
Yeah.
otherwise time, I just don't think about it, I guess. I don't know. Do you think about time frequently? If you see yourself moving through time?
I feel myself moving through time. Like it physically.
So what is that experience? Can you elaborate? I just am curious.
It's just how I perceive the feeling of like motion.
Okay.
Like that's the best way I could explain it.
Interesting.
Like feeling myself moving is feeling myself also moving through time for me as I move through space.
So I guess with that, do you have, I guess also maybe some of that, not that I don't see like a future. Obviously I see myself in a future, but it's not, I guess to me, the future could happen at any time. Whereas maybe for you, you have more of like, because being in school, you obviously like I could wake up tomorrow and our podcast could blow up.
Yeah.
And then that would be our future. But being in school, you have more of a kind of set time frame too. So I don't know if maybe that also or have you always felt?
I've always kind of felt that way though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I definitely feel time more when I'm busy though, as I'm doing more things. Because when I would work for DoorDash a few hours a day and then just like not really do much the rest of the day, time move a lot more slowly.
Time perception is very interesting too, I think.
Yeah.
How people can perceive, and I think there's actually been like science that has shown not even just like space and like movement, like obviously that we have proven, but I think that just our perception of time, like even just comparatively to me and you, can be different, which is also very interesting, I think.
Yes.
Because it's not like the time itself is warped or anything. As far as we know.
Yeah. Time can be warped, I think.
Like on an individual basis, maybe? This is just theories, guys. We're not.
It could be slightly, but I think...
Or not.
Like, as you approach a black hole, the perception of time is going to change. Like,
so what about
lower.
Tomorrow? If you perceive time, but you could perceive the day to be a long day, and I could have perceived it to be a fast, short day. Exactly. So that's interesting as well. And I mean, sometimes it is just if you're busy compared to not being, but I also think sometimes even if you're doing this thing, like let's say tomorrow you watch TV and time drags on, but then the next day you watch TV and time feels like it goes fast. So I don't think it's always about doing something.
Yeah, it's not always completely dependent on doing it, but it does affect it though.
Yeah. But sometimes I feel like some days you feel like you can get a lot done, and then the next day you don't feel like you can get the same amount of stuff done, which is also interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe time's just messing with us, just playing a 4D chess.
Literally 4D chess, because it's time.
Which then brings in, but not today, but someday, different multiverse.
Yes. We'll be talking about dimensional theory in the future.
Yes. Because that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But time, and then just perception is interesting as well, obviously.
Yes.
Because we also need, I mean, obviously we can lose sight, we can lose any of our senses to any of our perception, which can then lead to, I've been reading a book about hallucinations, so that was interesting. But just in general, your body can kind of start to make up for the lost sensory.
Well, and you can even lose perception of other things too. Like, there's a part of the brain where, like, you can lose the ability to, like, perceive music, for example.
Oh.
Yeah, which would be an awful... That just doesn't sound like a world that...
No.
Doesn't sound like...
That does make sense, though, because it's... Like, if you have maybe, like a stroke, infarction, or just damage due to any cause to certain parts of the brain, especially with music. In the book I read, music is very interdependent on every part of the brain pretty much.
Yeah.
So if you have a severed connection, it would make sense as to why you can't perceive it really anymore.
Yeah.
Which would suck, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, perception. It's just an interesting topic, I think. Always. I mean, because it's also like, it's a very broad topic too, so it's kind of hard to...
It's hard to pinpoint.
Yeah, like it's hard to be like, well, what about perception, you know? But
yeah,
there's obviously taste, smell, touch, feel, heat, temperature.
Yeah, hearing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Sight. I don't know. Did we say sight?
I think so. But yeah.
So I think that's all we have on we could probably find ages of things to talk about on perception, but I think that's all for today.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any, we have a bunch of, like 4 days of the week, a bunch of ideas, but we want more ideas. So you leave us some ideas on what you would want us to talk about so that we have more ideas, and then they're also relevant to what you guys want to hear us talk about too. So just leave a comment letting us know.
Yep. You can leave a comment on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube.
Yes. So you know how to reach us. Leave us some comments letting us know, and we will see you next time.